Hey, what's going on, everybody? So today I return to you with a first place deck profile of Yu-Gi-Oh! Day from the Castle with my Fire King Kozmos. So, and here's the nice little token the top 8 got, everybody of top 8. But, before I get into this, I do want to say that this will probably be a little bit in depth, so if you don't like long deck profiles or whatever, then the deck list will be in the description below. So yeah, Let's start with a discussion of why I did Fire King Kozmos, as opposed to like other variants of Kozmos or just in general other decks. In recent playing and testing, I have enjoyed playing Kozmos to a fair deal, just because being able to summon pilots and then it's a very safe deck all around. The pilots are very safe. They have the ability to, tag out, banish, summon into whatever from your hand. Lets you play around a lot of back row. The ships all float. I mean, it's a very safe deck, and the only other deck that I would consider like that has a wide variety of options would be Burning Abyss. In playing with Monarchs, I don't really like it because their consistency is just not always there, and when it's not there and they brick hard, and it is almost unbearable and unplayable. So those were very frustrating, and so I ended up landing with Kozmos. And so why Fire King Kozmos was because having the Fire King Island allows you to, blow up a ship, float into a pilot, and so it's a nice way to, it gives you another way to summon a pilot more than just putting all the pressure on the E-Teles. And so, I mean, it just helps you play through some things. It helps the Monarch matchup, in my opinion, because the biggest struggle is, if all you do is normal summon a pilot and they tribute it with an Ether Stormforth, you're basically stopped for the turn, but this lets you kind of play through that. So that was kind of my meta call for it, and I really like it. You can do some really cool plays with the Fire King Island and the chicken and whatever. So that aside, we'll go ahead and get into the deck profile. Starting off, we have one Fire King Chicken. We just call him the Chicken. He's a level 3. It doesn't really matter, other than just you can sometimes for the combos you normal summon him and make rank 3s. So make rank 3s with Sword Trooper and whatever. So yeah, never want to draw this guy though. Never want to draw. Next up, we have two Veilers. I was at a toss-up between playing Veilor or Maxi. Originally I played Maxis, but going into this tournament, I kind of felt that Veilor was going to be better. I was expecting, Monarchs and things like that, where Veilor would just generally be better for me than the Maxis, and so I never really drew Veilors or Maxis throughout the tournament, whether I sided them in or whatever, so I don't know. I'd say it worked out, I guess, but more testing would have to happen to see which is going to be better going forward, but so yeah, not really much to say on those, but and then we have the Kozmo lineup, so we'll start out with the one-ofs. One Farmgirl for the OTKs, one Wickedwitch. Some people have started to cut her. I would not. She was an absolute all-star. She was a great MVP for me on the day. She helped me get over so much, and I wouldn't bump her up to more than one. I'd keep her as a one-of, but just she's really good and really necessary. I mean, worst case scenario, you float a ship into her, so that way she can pay 1,000 to protect herself, and you have a pilot that didn't die for the turn, so then going into your turn you'll have a pilot. But for me, I mean, she helped me. In the finals, I played against Blue Eyes, and game 2, he first turn summoned a Kawakimira Drago against me, and so this was my out. I happened to draw it off of a Kozmotown after shuffling my hand back, and so that was the out. Normal summon, pay 1,000 so she doesn't die, crash, and then from there proceeded to OTK. But, so I mean, she's really helpful, really important, in my opinion. But so next up, one deltashuttle. This is solely for the Fire King plays. Helps us dump Dark Ladies and Sword Troopers to the grave to set up for some cool stuff and whatever. And of course, he's another level 5 machine, so him and a Sliprider can make infinity and whatever. Next up, one landwalker. Some people might like him, some people might not. I don't know. Don't really care though. I personally love this guy. One of my favorite. So everybody talks about the Monarch matchup being really poor. I feel this deck has the best chance against Monarchs because you have the best. But with the Fire King play, you can set up your boards that you need against Monarchs really quickly and easily. And so, my favorite turn 1 board versus a Monarch deck would be Landwalker, Kozmotown, and 2 Dark Ladies. Because yes, I'm playing 2 Dark Ladies. We'll get to that later, but because Dark Lady is great against Monarchs and negating their effects, or worst case scenario, or I mean best case scenario, you're just. They're just there. They're just pressure. They're threats. Monarchs don't want to activate their effects when a Dark Lady's on board unless they have a return or whatever, but that's totally different. And so, like, they can't just punch over the Dark Ladies because of this guy. They can't punch over anything because of this guy, because he'll just blow up the Kozmotown instead. They can't Raigeki the board. You'll blow up a Kozmotown instead. I mean, he's just an all-around MVP, solid card, just as a one-of, though. Just as a one-of. And lastly, for the 1-1 Forerunner, I think he's still important because he can crash with Monarchs. In the Kozmo Mirror match, sometimes you get into crash wars with ships, and so, I mean, going from a Dark Destroyer to this guy, if people aren't playing this guy, then you basically just went out from there. You just, boom, bump over whatever they summoned and go from there. But I don't know, I think he's really important, mostly for Monarchs, because being able to crash with Monarchs and then float into something leads to good plays. So that's it for those. Next up, we have the 2-ofs. 2 Tincans. 2 Tincans is right. It's a good number for this deck. The card demise builds obviously would play 3 because this guy's really huge for them on that. But for me, on the Fire King build, it's not as important. So 2 is a good number. 2 Strawmans. Some might do 3, and I'd consider 3, but I almost never want to draw this guy. I only ever really want to float into him with the ships. So I mean, I think 2 is a good number for that. You definitely need at least 2 for your plays and stuff with this build, but I think 2 is a good number for that. 2 Soartroopers, again, some might do 3. I think 2 is a good number. 2 is your bare minimum. 2 is all you really need to get your plays off whenever, so I think 2 is fair. And lastly, the 2 Dark Ladies. As far as how many Dark Ladies do you play, if any, for Kozmo decks, it kind of varies, but this deck's sole purpose is basically just to establish unbreakable turn 1 boards, and so I mean, I really like having 2 of these. Just, I don't know, I really enjoy it because with deltashuttle you can dump one and then revive with the Soartroopers, and you'll still have one in the deck to float into, or to search off a tin can, or whatever. I mean, 2 has just been a really good number for me, all around. And lastly, the 3 of staple ships, 3 Dark Destroyer, Heart and Soul of the deck, and 3 Sliprider. So Monster Destruction, Spelltrap Destruction. I mean, these ships right here are the reason I love the deck so much. Being able to, you know, anytime tag a pilot into those and blow up monster spells and traps is just awesome. But next up we have the spells. 1 Raigeki, which this was basically a flex slot in the deck. I didn't really know what to put in for it, so I just kind of figured, well, let's just try out Raigeki and see how it works. And I only drew it a few times, but when I did draw it, I drew it against like a Pendulum deck that had established a board plus an Apex Avion, so this allowed me to crack the Avion and then kind of went from there. So it's alright. I'd probably I'll talk about what I'd swap it for in the future, but later in the deck profile. So the 1 Fire King Island, just wanted this card because you only need to get the play off 1 time for it to really count. And so I mean, you don't want to draw it late game. You just want to try to get it early, and then if you can't, then just don't draw it, more or less. 2 Allure of Darkness. Apologize for the mixed rarities, but whatever. This card's great. It's basically a pot agree with the deck because of Kozmotown and stuff like that. 2 E-Tellies, staple. 3 Terraformings, because at any point in time in this deck, Kozmotown is always good to have, so being able to search those is never a bad thing. But then, of course, this is also like playing... Instead of playing multiple Fire King Islands, just play the Terraformings, because it'll grab the Fire King Island or the Kozmotown, whichever's better for your situation. And then lastly, of course, 3 Kozmotowns. So, that's it for the spells. Next up, we have the traps. 1 Solemn Warning. Never actually drew this on today, but I have drawn it on previous days, and it's been really good for me, especially against Pendulum decks, and sometimes Monarchs as well. It can be really good, really helpful to stop the tribute summons and whatever. 2 Mojo, because I only have 2 Mojo, I would most assuredly play 3 if I did have 3, and so that would be what I would cut the Raigeki for if I had a 3rd one, but I'm fine as it is, just having the 2 and the Raigeki, because I usually end up searching these off of Kozmotown and whatever. And 3 Call the Haunted. No Oasis or anything else like that. This is really all you need with the traps. I mean, the bare minimum would be 3 Mojo, 3 Call, but I kind of like the warning. It comes in handy every now and then. So next up we have the extra deck. Interesting choices. So we'll start out with the F-Zero. A lot of this never really came up on the Yu-Gi-Oh day, and this guy hasn't come up for me at all so far, but he is still nice to have for the situations where you need him. So I mean, I would keep him in going forward. Rank 2s, Sky Cavalry, Centaurea, Herald of Pure Light, and Gachi Gantetsu. So the bare minimum that you need for the rank 2s are Herald of Pure Light. I personally like the other two because if you have your 2 Strawmans and you have nothing better to do with them, you can go into a Gachi, which will boost each of your monsters, and that boost is exceptionally important in the mirror match. Being able to like punch over their Dark Lady with your Dark Lady is awesome. And like, yeah, I mean the boost is really huge for the mirror match and some other matches as well. I mean, it makes Dark Lady 2600 so you can punch over Prime Monarchs and stuff like that, or makes Sliprider 25 or 27 depending on how many materials on him, so either way they can punch over Prime Monarchs. So that's pretty important. And then Sky Cavalry Centaurea is just really cool at, because I mean Strawman, he's just a wimpy little 500, but when you slap 2 of them together and all of a sudden you've got this 2000 body, doesn't die by battle, and can bounce things that he battles, it just really helps crack certain boards. So I mean, I like having the options, but these are all personal preference, of course. You can change them up how you feel, how you see fit. So next up we have the rank 3s. 1 Phantom Knight's a Breaksword. This card functions amazing with the deck all around. The ships float, your town searches and floats. I mean, being able to pop anything of yours and then pop one of theirs it's great. And he's a solid body. 1 Leviair. This guy works amazing, obviously, because you know Soartroopers, Strawman, any of those banished level 4 lower pilots, you can just special them back with this guy and keeps the plays going. And lastly, 1 Grand Pulse for the rank 3s. This guy's just great all around. Blows up spell and traps. I mean, all kinds of cool things you can do with him. Next up, we have the rank 5s. 1 Pleiades, 1 Adrius. Didn't make any of these, so I'm just kind of going through them. 1 Volcasaurus, and 1 Artifact Durandal. Never made any of these on the day, but they're all still great to have. The only one that I would say like you don't really need or don't really care about would be Adrius. I think Pleiades and Durandal are pretty solid to have, and the Volcasaurus is obviously great for indie games, going into time, you know, any kind of thing like that. But and lastly, of course, the Infinity package, Nova Infinity. This is the main one. This is like the only thing I think I really made from the extra deck on the day, and this is definitely the main one. Infinity is just huge for this deck. And lastly, to wrap up, the extra deck, Gaia Dragon Thundercharger and number 38 Hope Harbinger. So this is basically the best rank 8 in my opinion right now. It's the only one you really need to play. I never really make it anyways. And the Gaia Dragon is just a slap on top of like Volcasaurus or whatever after you use the effect. So none of that really came up on the day, but it's always good to have. Next up, the sideboard, and then at the very end I guess I'll start going over maybe some combos or something. We'll see. So sideboard, 2 Max C's. This was not a very well thought out sideboard. I'll throw that out there right now, but Max C's of course are good. This was to interchange between the Veilers, whichever you need for the matchups. 2 Gamichels, just to help deal with boards, you know, certain monsters and whatever that I can't otherwise deal with. 2 Chaos Hunters for the mirror match and potentially other things. Mostly just for the mirror match, though. 2 Dark Hole. This was to deal with monarchs with like Majesty's Fiend, Vantage Fiend, any monster floodgates, pretty much. 2 Anti-Spell for Pendulum. Turned out to be basically the only thing I had in the sideboard for Pendulum decks, which made the matchup kind of difficult. But 2 Royal Decree for card demise, rogue decks, and just anything with lots of back row, more so than what I have, which is only 6, of course. And lastly, 3 Massacre Strict for Monarchs. I mean, potentially other things, but mostly just Monarchs. But so that's it for the deck. One last thing to mention, of course, is like the most ideal field for this deck is being able to turn 1, summon out like Dark Lady, Infinity, any ship, and like have a Mojo set. And you'd be surprised how often that can actually happen if you open with your Fire King Island and you open good enough. But yeah, I would show combos, but that some of them can take a little while, take a couple minutes, so I don't feel like extending this further on this video. But yeah, maybe another time. So that's it for the deck. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me pan out a little bit. I'll show the mat as well. We'll wrap up with that. Dark Magician on the left, Dark Magician Girl on the right. Gorgeous looking mat, and I'm excited to be playing. Gonna try to do Dark Magicians after the next set comes out. So now that I have this mat. So thanks for watching.